Before this night ends, I need to tell you a story that was never meant to be heard. A story that sticks in your mind forever. So if you're brave enough, then turn off the lights, wear your headphones, and listen closely with rain sound and enjoy this 30 minutes horror video. Also, I love to hear from you. What time is it right now where you are, and which city are you listening from tonight? But don't say I didn't warn you, because after this, sleep won't come easy. What if the hitchhiker you picked up never existed? That was the first question that clawed its way into Hank Lawson's mind on the night everything changed. For 30 years, Hank had driven the long, lonely highways of Wisconsin, hauling freight through storms, through midnight fog, and through stretches of road so desolate it felt like the world had ended. He thought he'd seen it all. Wrecks, strange lights in the sky, drifters stumbling along the shoulder. But nothing prepared him for the stranger on Route 94. Truckers whispered about him at truck stops. They never called him a ghost outright. Truckers don't believe in that kind of thing. But everyone knew someone who swore they'd picked up a hitchhiker out there late at night, only to realize later that the man was gone, vanished without ever opening a door. Some drivers laughed it off, a campfire tale for the road. Others, they spoke softer, eyes darting, as if even talking about him might summon him. The legend was always the same: a tall man in an old army coat, thumb sticking out under the pale glow of the highway lamps. He never said much, just gave directions, until, suddenly, he wasn't there anymore. Hank never believed it. Ghost stories were for greenhorns and wide-eyed rookies, not for a man who'd spent half his life on the road. He was hard, practical, too tired most nights to even think about the supernatural. But on November 12, 1997, Hank's disbelief was tested. The night was bitterly cold. Snow clung to the ditches like dirty cotton, and the moon hung low, silvering the frozen fields. Hank was hauling a load of canned goods from Milwaukee to Minneapolis, Route 94 stretching ahead in an endless ribbon of asphalt. The CB radio was dead quiet, not even static, just silence. Hank lit a cigarette, rolled down the window a crack, and let the icy wind keep him awake. That's when he saw him. At mile marker 211, where the road curved into a stretch of pine forest, a figure stood at the shoulder. The beam of Hank's headlights swept over him. A tall man, maybe 6'2", wearing a heavy army green coat, collar turned up. His face was shadowed beneath the brim of a cap. His thumb jutted out, pale against the night. Hank's heart gave a little jolt. For a moment, he thought about speeding past, but there was something about the man's stillness. Unnerving, yes, but also expectant, like he'd been waiting for Hank specifically. Against every instinct, Hank slowed the rig and pulled over. The hitchhiker climbed in without a word. The cab filled with a strange cold draft, even though Hank had the heater blasting. "Where are you headed?" Hank asked, voice gruff. The man turned. His eyes caught the dim glow of the dashboard lights. They were pale, colorless, like old glass left in the sun too long. "West," the hitchhiker said simply. His voice was flat, but there was something about it, like two tones overlapping, almost mechanical. Hank nodded, trying to play it cool. Lots of drifters hitched rides west. Nothing unusual about that. He put the truck back in gear, and they rolled into the darkness. For the first 20 minutes, neither spoke. Hank stole glances at him now and then, but the man never moved. His hands rested loosely on his knees, fingers long and bony. Every so often, he seemed to glance out the window, not at the passing road or the forest, but upward, like he was searching the sky. Finally, Hank broke the silence. "So, what's your name?" The hitchhiker turned his head slowly, as though considering whether to answer. Then he smiled, just barely. "You already know my name, Hank." The cigarette slipped from Hank's lips. He hadn't told the man his name. His CDL badge was clipped to his vest, sure, but it was too dark to read from where the man sat. Hank gripped the wheel tighter. "How the hell would you know that?" The hitchhiker didn't answer. Instead, he leaned forward, eyes gleaming faintly in the dim light. "You've driven this stretch before," he said. "Back in '86, blizzard night. You remember it, don't you?" Hank's throat went dry. He did remember. That storm had nearly killed him. Whiteout conditions, jackknife trucks, and somewhere in the chaos, a girl's body on the side of the road, blood in the snow. He'd never told anyone about it. Not a soul. "How do you know that?" Hank's voice was a low growl now, a mix of anger and fear. The man's pale eyes flickered. He tilted his head, almost amused. "Because I was there." The rig swerved slightly as Hank's grip faltered. He slammed it back straight, heart pounding in his ears. His pulse thudded like the hum of the tires against the frozen highway. "Bullshit," Hank spat. "That was 10 years ago." The man just smiled wider, showing too many teeth. 10 years, he said softly. Or maybe... For me, it was just last night. The words hung in the cab like frost. The road ahead stretched endlessly into the dark, but for the first time in his life, Hank Lawson wished he was anywhere but Route 94. And then... The radio crackled, a burst of static, loud and sharp. Hank jumped. Through the noise, a voice hissed. Not the hitchhiker's voice, not Hank's. Something else. "Don't stop the truck." Hank's blood ran cold. He looked at the hitchhiker, but the man's expression hadn't changed. He was still smiling, still watching Hank like a predator watches prey. The cigarette on the floor hissed as it burned itself out. And that's when Hank realized the ride had only just begun. The radio went dead again, the voice vanishing as quickly as it had come, leaving only silence and the low hum of the engine. Hank tried to steady his breathing, but the hairs on the back of his neck refused to settle. He gripped the wheel tighter. "What the hell was that?" he muttered. The hitchhiker didn't answer. He just sat there, head tilted slightly toward the CB, a faint smile tugging at his lips, as if he'd been expecting it. Hank forced a laugh, though it came out shaky. Damn trucker static happens all the time. But he knew it didn't. He'd been on the road too long to mistake the difference between interference and a voice that knew what it was saying. "Don't stop the truck." The words echoed in his skull. For the first time in years, Hank wished he wasn't alone out here. No other rigs in sight, no headlights behind him, just an endless black highway carved through a frozen wilderness. "You said you were there," Hank said finally, glancing sideways. "Back in '86. What did you mean?" The hitchhiker's smile widened. He turned, and in the dim glow of the dashboard, Hank saw something he hadn't noticed before. His coat, an old army field jacket, looked wet. Not from rain, not in this cold. Dark patches stained the fabric, irregular and spreading. "Blizzard night," the man said. "She was lying in the snow, remember?" Hank's stomach twisted. He forced his eyes back on the road. He hadn't thought about that girl in years, not properly. But the memory rushed back like a flood. He'd seen her on the shoulder, waving frantically. He was young, green, still terrified of missing a delivery. He'd been going too fast for the storm. By the time he hit the brakes, the girl was already too close. The truck slid. He swore he hadn't hit her. He'd told himself for years she must have stumbled, must have fallen in the snow. But when he looked in the mirror, he remembered the red blooming across the white. He never stopped. He couldn't stop. You don't know what you're talking about," Hank said, his voice rough. The hitchhiker leaned closer. His breath was cold, colder than the air outside. "You left her," he whispered, "and you told yourself the storm would cover it. You told yourself nobody would find out." Hank's throat closed. His palms were slick on the wheel. "Shut the hell up." But the man just chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "It's funny, Hank. You think you've been driving all these years to deliver freight, but you've been driving to get away." Hank's jaw clenched. The road ahead blurred with the sting of his own eyes. The CB radio crackled again, and this time the voice was sharper, clearer. "Hank, don't trust him." The wheel jerked in Hank's hands. He slammed the brakes, tires screaming against the frozen asphalt. The rig shuddered, fish-tailed, then steadied. His heart hammered so loud he thought it might burst through his chest. He looked at the passenger seat. Empty. The hitchhiker was gone. Hank's breath came fast, clouds of vapor in the cold air of the cab. He looked at the door, still closed, no sign of anyone leaving. He checked the mirrors. Nothing but darkness. Jesus Christ, he whispered. Then, tap, tap, tap. Hank froze. The sound came from the sleeper berth behind him. 3 sharp knocks. Slowly, he turned. The curtain that separated the cab from the sleeper was drawn shut. The knocks came again, louder this time. Tap, tap, tap. Hank's hand shook as he reached for the curtain. His fingers brushed the fabric, then stopped. A voice came from the other side, low, smooth, terrifyingly calm. "Keep driving, Hank." Hank ripped the curtain back. Nothing. The sleeper was empty. Just his rumpled blankets and a duffel bag. No man. No one. He stumbled back into the driver's seat, slammed the rig into gear and pushed it hard down the road. His pulse refused to calm. For the next hour, he drove in silence, refusing to look at the passenger seat, refusing to check the mirror. Every sound made him twitch, the whine of the engine, the rattle of a loose chain, the whistle of the wind through the seals. Finally, headlights appeared in the distance. Relief washed through him. Another trucker. He grabbed the CB, thumbed the button. "Breaker, breaker. This is Lawson, mile marker 245. You got your ears on?" The other rig drew closer. No answer. Hank tried again. "Come on, driver. I just need to hear another voice. You there?" Silence. As the truck passed, Hank glanced out his window. The cab was lit. He saw the driver, and in the passenger seat, the hitchhiker, staring at him, smiling. Hank's scream was swallowed by the roar of his own engine as the other truck disappeared into the night. The scream tore from Hank's throat before he could stop it, raw and ragged. He slammed the CB down and pressed the pedal harder, the rig barreling into the night like it could outrun what he'd just seen. But deep down, Hank knew. There was no outrunning this. The miles ticked by, each one slower than the last. The road stretched out in endless ribbons, and though his hands were locked white-knuckled on the wheel, he felt the weight of eyes on him. Watching. Always watching. He hadn't touched another cigarette since the hitchhiker climbed in. His hands shook too badly to light one. Finally, Hank spoke, his voice hoarse. "What the hell are you?" For a moment, nothing answered but the hum of the tires. Then softly, from the darkness of the cab, "You already know." Hank's blood ran cold. He jerked his eyes to the passenger seat, empty again. But the voice was still there. "You think of me as a man, a drifter, a ghost, but that's not it. I'm what you left behind." Hank's heart thudded. His throat tightened until he could barely breathe. "This isn't real," he whispered. "I'm just tired, haven't slept enough." The voice chuckled, dry and cruel. "Is that what you told yourself that night, in '86? That you were too tired to stop? That you didn't see her?" Hank slammed a fist against the wheel. "Shut up!" But the voice only grew stronger, sharper. "You heard her scream. You saw her crawl. And still, you drove on." Hank's vision blurred with tears, unbidden, hot against his cheeks. He hadn't allowed himself to feel this in years. He'd buried it so deep it almost didn't feel like his memory anymore. But now, every second of it came back, clearer than the night it happened. The girl's hand outstretched, clutching at the air as the storm swallowed her. The crunch of tires rolling past. The silence after. "Stop," Hank croaked. But the hitchhiker wasn't done. "Do you remember her name?" Hank swallowed hard. His grip tightened until his hands ached. He did remember. It had been in the papers the next morning. He'd avoided reading it, but the headline had burned into his brain. "Local teen found dead on Highway 94. "Emily," Hank whispered. His chest heaved. Her name was Emily. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Then, a whisper so close it felt like it came from inside his own head. She remembers you too. Hank's vision snapped to the windshield, and his heart nearly stopped. There she was. A pale figure in the road, illuminated by his headlights. A girl, no older than 16, hair matted with snow, eyes wide with frozen terror. Hank screamed and jerked the wheel. The rig swerved violently, nearly tipping before he righted it, tires shrieking against the asphalt. By the time he looked again, the road was empty. But he knew what he saw. The voice in the cab laughed softly, almost tender. "You can't outrun it, Hank. Not anymore." Hank's chest heaved. His eyes darted to the side mirror and froze. The hitchhiker was sitting on the fuel tank step outside the cab, clutching the side mirror, face inches from the glass. His pale eyes locked onto Hank's. His smile was too wide, stretching impossibly across his face. And then, he mouthed the words, "You left her." Hank swerved again, heart in his throat, but when he looked back, the hitchhiker was gone. The CB radio crackled. "Lawson," the voice hissed. The same one as before. Not the hitchhiker's voice. Something else. Desperate. Urgent. "Don't pull over. Whatever you do, don't stop that truck." Hank's knuckles bled where he'd gripped the wheel too hard. He was trapped, caught between two voices, one condemning him, one warning him, and he didn't know which was worse. His eyes burned with exhaustion, with fear, with guilt he could no longer bury. But then, in the headlights, another figure. This one wasn't Emily. This one wasn't pale, wasn't bloody. It was a man, standing calmly in the center of the highway, the hitchhiker. His army coat fluttered in the wind, his cap shadowed his face. But Hank saw the grin, wide, terrifying, and this time, he didn't vanish. Hank's foot slammed the brakes. The trailer screeched, fishtailing on the icy asphalt. He wrestled the wheel, trying not to jackknife, the rig shuddering violently as sparks burst from the tires. When the truck finally lurched to a stop, Hank was gasping, drenched in sweat despite the cold. The road ahead was empty, but the passenger door clicked, and slowly, impossibly, swung open. The hitchhiker climbed back in, his pale eyes gleaming with victory. He settled into the seat as though he'd never left, and he spoke, calm and steady, like a man who had all the time in the world. "You and I are going to take a little drive, Hank, a drive back to where it all began." The hitchhiker settled back into the passenger seat like he belonged there, like he'd been there the whole ride. The cab filled with that unnatural cold again, seeping into Hank's bones, rattling his teeth. "Back to where it all began," the man repeated, voice low, almost soothing. Hank gritted his teeth. "I don't know what the hell you are, but I'm not driving anywhere with you." The hitchhiker tilted his head, pale eyes glimmering in the dash light. "You don't have a choice, Hank. You never did." Hank's pulse hammered in his ears. He wanted to slam the brakes again, to throw himself out of the cab, to do anything to end this. But something about the man's presence rooted him in place. It wasn't fear. It was something heavier, like chains binding him to the seat. The hitchhiker leaned closer, his breath sharp and icy. "Mile marker 186. Do you remember it?" Hank's gut twisted. He did. That was where he'd seen her, Emily, in the snowstorm all those years ago, the place where everything started. The man's smile spread wider, too wide, stretching across his face until it looked wrong, inhuman. "Then take us there." Hank slammed a fist against the steering wheel. "Why? So you can torment me more? I already know what I did." The hitchhiker didn't flinch. His voice dropped to a whisper that slithered under Hank's skin. "No, Hank. You don't know everything. Not yet." The cab went silent again. Just the hum of the road, the faint whistle of the wind. But the words hung heavy, suffocating. Finally, Hank gave in. His foot pressed the accelerator. the rig thundering westward toward mile marker 186. The miles crawled by, each one worse than the last. Shadows seemed longer, the moon dimmer, the world itself darker. Hank's eyes burned with exhaustion, but fear kept him wide awake. The hitchhiker watched him the whole way, never blinking, never moving, just smiling. Hank wanted to ask, "What are you? A ghost? A demon?" His own guilt made flesh. But deep down, he was terrified of the answer. Instead, he muttered, "What happens when we get there?" The hitchhiker's grin widened. The truth. By the time the green reflective numbers appeared, 186, Hank's chest was tight with dread. He slowed the rig, pulling to the shoulder. The place was quiet, desolate. Snow blanketed the ditch just like it had that night. The trees loomed tall, their branches rattling in the wind. Hank's hands trembled as he put the truck in park. "All right, we're here. Now what?" The hitchhiker's pale eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "Get out!" Hank shook his head. "Hell no." The man leaned closer, his voice dropping into something colder than the night air. "If you don't, I'll bring her in here instead." Hank's skin crawled. His mind screamed to stay inside, but something deeper told him he didn't want to see what would happen if Emily climbed into the cab. He opened the door. The icy wind hit him like a wall. His boots crunched in the snow as he stepped down. The world outside felt unreal, too quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. The hitchhiker appeared beside him, though Hank never saw him move from the cab. One moment he was inside. The next, he was standing in the snow, coat hanging heavy, his shadow stretching long and wrong in the moonlight. "Look," the man whispered. Hank followed his gaze, and his blood ran cold. A figure lay half buried in the ditch. Snow clung to her hair, her skin pale as ice. Her arms sprawled at odd angles. Her lips were parted, as though still gasping for air. Emily. Hank's knees went weak. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible. They buried her. I read it in the papers." The hitchhiker's smile cut wider. "Did they? Or did they bury someone else?" Hank stumbled closer, heart pounding. The closer he got, the more wrong it seemed. Her face wasn't exactly like he remembered. The features blurred, shifting under the pale light. Sometimes it was Emily. Sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes it was a stranger. Sometimes it was his own face. Hank staggered back, breath ragged. "What the hell is this?" The hitchhiker's voice was steady, calm, cruel. "It's the truth, Hank. You've been driving this highway for 10 years, trying to forget. But you didn't just leave her. You left yourself here, too." Hank shook his head violently. No, that's not real. You're screwing with me." The hitchhiker stepped closer. His eyes glowed brighter, piercing, endless. "You still don't get it. You never left Route 94, Hank. You've been here since that night." Hank's breath caught. His heart thundered in his chest. The man leaned close, lips curling into a final whisper. "You died in 86. The world tilted. The snow fell harder. The shadows stretched long and deep. And Hank Lawson felt the ground beneath him vanish. The snow swallowed him whole. For a moment, Hank thought he was falling down into endless white. His lungs seized, his chest screamed, but then he blinked, and he was back in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel. The truck was moving. The hum of the tires roared in his ears. The road stretched out before him, the same endless stretch of Route 94. For a long moment, he thought maybe it had all been a hallucination, exhaustion, guilt, his own mind cracking. But then he glanced at the passenger seat. The hitchhiker sat there calmly, watching him, smiling. Hank gritted his teeth. "You said I died in 86. That's impossible. I've been driving ever since. I've made runs. I've talked to people. I've lived my life." The hitchhiker tilted his head, pale eyes glimmering. "Haven't you noticed, Hank? How the years blur together? How every night feels the same? Same road, same shadows, same silence." Hank's chest tightened. His mind raced. He thought back, tried to picture birthdays, holidays, faces of people he'd met. But the memories slipped away like fog in the wind. All he could truly remember were the roads, the endless highways. "No," Hank rasped. "That can't be." The hitchhiker leaned closer. His voice was almost gentle now, like a teacher explaining something simple. "You never left Route 94. That night, in the blizzard, you hit her. You didn't survive the crash either. You've been driving in circles ever since, a ghost in your own rig." Hank's hands trembled. He slammed the brakes, but the truck didn't slow. The speedometer needle didn't move. The highway stretched ahead, infinite and unbroken. "You're lying!" Hank roared. "I'm alive! I'm right here!" The hitchhiker's smile widened. "Alive where, Hank? Show me." The world outside the windshield flickered. For a split second, Hank didn't see the highway. He saw snow, red smeared across white, twisted metal glowing in the storm. A crumpled rig, a broken body slumped over the wheel. And then, the road was back. Hank's stomach lurched. His voice cracked. "If I'm dead, then what are you?" The hitchhiker's pale eyes glowed brighter, like headlights burning in the dark. His grin split too wide, stretching impossibly across his face. "I'm the one who walks them home," he whispered. "The ones who don't know they're gone. The ones who keep driving mile after mile thinking there's still somewhere left to go. I ride with them until they're ready to see." Hank's breath hitched. His chest felt like it was caving in. "And if I don't want to see?" The hitchhiker leaned close, so close Hank could feel the icy breath against his ear. "Then you keep driving. Forever." Hank's vision blurred. His hands were numb on the wheel. The truth pressed down on him like the weight of the entire road. For 30 years he'd been running, not from the law, not from the storm, but from himself. From that night, from Emily's outstretched hand. He'd never escaped. He never would. The CB crackled suddenly, louder than before. A new voice, frantic, cutting through the static. "Lawson! Hank Lawson, you there?" Hank jolted. His eyes widened. That voice, he knew it. Jerry. Another trucker. Someone real. "I'm here," Hank shouted into the mic. "Jerry, I'm here. You hear me?" Silence. Then, "Lawson, you're not on the boards anymore. You've been listed as dead since '86. Every driver knows the story. They say you still drive this stretch. Don't let him in, Hank. Don't let the hitchhiker in." Hank's blood froze. His eyes darted to the man beside him. The hitchhiker smiled wider, teeth gleaming too sharp in the dim light. The CB sputtered again. "Hank, it's time to let go. Stop driving." Tears blurred Hank's vision. His chest heaved with a lifetime of guilt. The wheel slipped in his grasp as the weight of the words crushed him. Stop driving. For the first time in decades, Hank's foot lifted from the accelerator. The engine's roar softened. The road ahead shimmered, bending like heat waves on asphalt. The hitchhiker's grin faltered. His voice lost its calm edge, grew sharper. "No. Keep going. Don't listen." Hank's pulse thundered. He looked between the road and the man, between the endless highway and the CB's crackle. One choice, one truth. With shaking hands, Hank reached down and turned off the ignition. The rig didn't sputter. It didn't lurch. It simply dissolved. The cab faded. The road fell away. Darkness swallowed everything. And for the first time in 30 years, Hank Lawson let go. When the light returned, it was snow. Quiet, peaceful snow. And a girl standing before him, Emily, her eyes soft, her face no longer twisted in pain. "You stopped," she whispered. Hank's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," he choked. "I should have stopped that night. I should have helped you." She reached out, her hand warm against his. "You did now." And just like that, the hitchhiker was gone. No pale eyes, no grin, no voice. Only the snow. Only peace. Hank Lawson closed his eyes, and Route 94 was silent once more. Hank himself was the ghost all along, trapped on Route 94 since the night of the blizzard. The hitchhiker wasn't a man at all, but a reaper-like figure who guides lost souls. The CB voices were other truckers retelling his legend, bleeding through into his purgatory. Would you still check into a motel if you knew it would never be in the same place tomorrow? The storm hit just after midnight. Rain hammered the windshield so hard it sounded like gravel, and the wipers on Daniel's old Ford barely kept up. His girlfriend Sarah leaned forward in the passenger seat, her eyes squinting through the darkness. "There," she said, pointing. "A sign. Motel." The glowing neon flickered in the distance, cutting through the sheets of rain. Vacancy. A lone building sat just off the highway, its parking lot cracked and half flooded. Daniel pulled in with relief. The car sputtered, coughing like it might die any second. "We're lucky," he muttered. "If we hadn't found this place." He didn't finish the sentence. The motel looked old but cared for, the kind of roadside stop you'd expect in the 1970s. A single-story row of rooms stretched out, each with a yellow light glowing above the door. A thin man with hollow eyes sat behind the front desk, staring blankly at a TV playing static. "You folks traveling far?" the man asked without looking up. His voice was flat, like he'd said the same line 1,000 times. "Just passing through," Daniel said, signing the ledger. He noticed the pages were filled with names, some old, some recent, but none had checkout times, only check-ins. The man slid a brass key across the counter. "Room 6. Enjoy your stay." Inside, the room smelled faintly of mildew, but it was warm and dry. A faded painting of a mountain hung crooked above the bed. Sarah tossed her wet jacket on a chair and collapsed onto the mattress. "I don't care if this place is haunted," she said with a tired laugh, "as long as I can sleep." Daniel chuckled, though something about the motel unsettled him. Maybe it was the silence. Outside, the storm still raged, but within these walls, the sound was muffled, as if the building itself swallowed noise. He pulled the curtains closed, glanced once more at the parking lot, then climbed into bed beside her. Sleep came quickly. When Daniel woke, sunlight streamed through the curtains. The storm was gone. He rubbed his eyes, yawned, and nudged Sarah awake. "Come on, let's grab some breakfast and hit the road." They packed up, stepped outside, and froze. The parking lot was there. Their car was there. The motel was there. But everything else was different. The highway was gone. The gas station they'd passed the night before was gone. The trees looked different. Taller, darker, thicker, as if they'd been transported to some dense, unfamiliar forest. "What the hell?" Daniel whispered. He walked a few steps into the clearing beyond the motel lot. There was no sign of the road they had driven in on. Only endless woods, stretching in all directions. Sarah's voice shook. "Daniel, we were near Cedar Falls last night, right? Where are we now?" He didn't answer. Back inside the lobby, the same hollow-eyed clerk sat behind the counter, sipping coffee. Daniel slammed his hands down. "What's going on? This isn't where we stopped last night." The man's expression didn't change. He stirred his coffee lazily. "The motel moves," he said, as if it were the most ordinary fact in the world. "Always has." Sarah laughed nervously. "Moves? Like, what? You mean it's some kind of chain? Different locations?" The man's eyes finally met hers, and for the first time Daniel saw something. Something cold, almost gleeful, flicker in them. "No," the clerk said. "This building, the land beneath it, the air around it, one place at night, another by morning, sometimes the desert, sometimes the mountains, sometimes..." He trailed off, sipping again. Daniel's chest tightened. "That's impossible." The man shrugged. "Doesn't matter if you believe it. You're here now. Breakfast is at 8. Sarah tugged Daniel's arm, whispering harshly, "Let's just get in the car and drive. We'll find our way back." They grabbed their bags, hurried outside, and climbed into the Ford. Daniel turned the key. The engine sputtered, roared, then died. He tried again. Nothing. Sarah gripped his hand. It worked fine last night. The motel lights flickered, all in unison, as if in response. Daniel stormed back inside, but the front desk was empty. The clerk was gone. The static-filled TV buzzed louder than before. He slammed the bell on the counter, once, twice, 3 times. No answer. From the hallway behind the desk, a door creaked open. A whisper floated out, low and rasping, though the words were impossible to make out. Daniel stepped closer. "Hello?" The whisper grew louder, more urgent, as if it were calling him specifically. Sarah grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. He pushed the door open and found a narrow corridor lit by flickering bulbs. At the far end stood another door, slightly ajar, with something carved into the wood. Daniel squinted. The carving was a word. His last name. "Daniel!" Sarah's voice trembled. "Why is your name on that door?" The name carved into the door was unmistakable. Miller. Daniel Miller. His stomach twisted. This doesn't make sense." Sarah tugged at his sleeve, her nails digging into his arm. "Daniel, please, we shouldn't be here." But the whispering from behind the door grew louder, curling through the hallway like smoke, pulling him forward. It wasn't just sound. It felt personal, familiar, almost like someone he once knew. Daniel reached for the doorknob. The cold brass made his skin prickle. With a shaky breath, he pushed it open. The room beyond wasn't part of the motel. It looked older, much older, like a cabin that had been abandoned for decades. The air reeked of mold and damp wood. Rotting furniture sagged in corners, and the wallpaper peeled like dead skin. On the far wall, a mirror hung crooked, its glass spiderwebbed with cracks. "Daniel," Sarah whispered, "let's go back, now." But his reflection in the mirror didn't match his movements. He raised his hand. The reflection didn't. It just stood there, smiling faintly. Then it spoke. "You shouldn't have come back." Daniel's chest seized. His reflection's lips moved, but no sound reached his ears. Instead, the words pressed directly into his mind, cold and uninvited. "What is this?" he whispered. The smile widened. Behind him, Sarah gasped. "Daniel, look." He turned. The doorway they'd entered through was gone. Only a solid wall remained. Panic surged. He pounded the wall with his fists. "Hey, let us out!" The mirror began to hum, a low vibration that rattled his bones. His reflection tilted its head, then stepped forward. Not out of the mirror, but into the cracks themselves, disappearing piece by piece as if sliding into another world. The whispering filled the room again, louder this time. Dozens of voices, men, women, children. Some screamed, some cried, some begged. Sarah clapped her hands over her ears. "Make it stop!" Daniel stumbled toward the mirror. "What do you want from us?" The cracks widened, and through them, he glimpsed something moving, shapes in the dark. Pale faces pressed against the glass from the other side, eyes hollow, mouths open in silent screams. And then he saw it, his own face among them. "Daniel!" Sarah yanked him back just as the mirror shattered. The glass didn't fall to the floor. Instead, it hung suspended in the air, each shard floating and spinning, reflecting different scenes. Highways, deserts, snowy fields, endless forests. The motel in every possible place. One shard flew straight at him, slicing his arm. Warm blood dripped onto the floor. The humming ceased. And suddenly, the door reappeared. Sarah grabbed his hand, pulling him through the hallway and back into the lobby. The desk was still empty. The static on the TV had grown louder, nearly deafening now, showing nothing but white snow. They collapsed onto the nearest chair, breathing hard. "What the hell was that?" Sarah whispered. Daniel pressed his bleeding arm, his mind reeling. "I don't know. But this place, It's not just moving. It's collecting something. The clerk returned as if nothing had happened, carrying a tray of steaming coffee. "Breakfast is ready," he said, setting it down on the counter. His expression was calm, his tone casual, like two terrified guests hadn't just stumbled out of a nightmare. Daniel stormed up to him. "What the hell is this place? What's behind that hallway? That room?" The man blinked slowly, then smiled. "Rooms are different for everyone. Some people never open theirs. Some do. Some regret it." Sarah's voice shook. "And the mirror? The voices?" The clerk stirred sugar into his cup. "Echoes. Fragments. The motel doesn't like to let go of what it's collected. They tend to linger." Daniel slammed his fist on the desk. "Collected? Collected what?" The man leaned forward, his hollow eyes glinting. "People." Sarah's face went pale. No, we're leaving. Right now." The clerk shrugged. "You're free to try. Everyone is." They bolted for the car again. This time, Daniel pumped the gas pedal, whispering desperate prayers under his breath. The engine roared to life. Relief surged through him. "See? We can get out." The wheels spun violently in mud that hadn't been there before. The more he pressed the pedal, the deeper the tires sank, as if the earth itself was swallowing the car. Sarah screamed, "It's pulling us under!" Daniel shoved the gear into reverse, but the car didn't budge. The motel's neon sign flickered, faster and faster, until it glowed a steady, burning red. And then, silence. The car stopped sinking. The mud was gone. They were parked in a completely different place. The motel was still there, but the forest around them had vanished. Instead, they sat on the edge of a vast desert, the horizon shimmering with heat waves, though it was barely morning. Sarah covered her mouth, trembling. "Oh my God. It's true. The motel moves." A faint knock came at their car window. Daniel jumped. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, stood there in a tattered nightgown, barefoot in the sand. Her hair was tangled, her eyes wide and empty. Sarah lowered her window an inch. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Where are your parents?" The girl didn't blink. She whispered something so softly they almost didn't hear it. "They never leave." The girl's whisper lingered in the air like smoke. "They never leave." Sarah froze, her knuckles white on the window crank. What does that mean? Who never leaves? But the girl didn't answer. She simply turned and walked barefoot across the hot sand, heading straight for the motel. Daniel and Sarah exchanged a terrified glance before scrambling out of the car. "Wait! Come back!" Sarah called after her. The child never looked back. The desert heat hit them instantly, the sun already scorching. Sweat beaded on Daniel's neck as he followed Sarah toward the motel. The little girl pushed open one of the room doors and slipped inside. They hurried after her, but when they flung the door open, the room was empty. Dust floated in the stale air. The bed was neatly made, untouched. Sarah's voice cracked. "She just walked in here. I saw her." Daniel scanned the room. Something caught his eye. A drawing pinned to the wall with a rusted nail. A child's drawing. Crayons on yellowing paper. It showed the motel. Each square door was neatly scribbled in, but in front of one room, a stick figure stood alone. Its head was colored black. Above it, in shaky letters, Room 6. The same room they had stayed in last night. Daniel's pulse quickened. "She's connected to our room." Sarah shivered. "Why? What does she want from us?" Before he could answer, the floor beneath them trembled. A low groan echoed through the walls, like the entire building was shifting in its foundation. Sarah grabbed his arm, her eyes wide. "It's moving again." They stumbled back outside just in time to see the horizon change. The desert rippled like water, blurring, melting, and suddenly it wasn't sand anymore. It was night. Stars burned in a black sky above a vast, snowy plain. The cold hit them like knives. Sarah hugged herself, teeth chattering. This is impossible. Daniel stared at the motel. Its neon sign buzzed faintly, casting the only glow for miles. The clerk said it moves, but he didn't say why. They decided to confront him again. Inside the lobby, the man was waiting, as if he had known they'd return. He sat perfectly still, sipping from his chipped mug. "You've seen the child," he said calmly. Daniel slammed the crumpled drawing onto the counter. "Who is she? What does this mean?" The clerk glanced at the paper, unfazed. "Guests leave things behind. Some leave luggage, some leave themselves. The girl belongs to the motel now, just like others before her." Sarah leaned forward, voice shaking with rage. "Others? How many? How long has this been happening?" The man's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Since the first night it appeared. The motel was never built, you see. It arrived, and it will keep arriving. Different places, different times, always waiting for the next traveler in need of rest." Daniel's skin crawled. "And what happens to those travelers?" The clerk set his mug down and whispered as though sharing a secret. "They stay." Before Daniel could press further, the lights flickered. The static on the TV flared to life, but this time, instead of snow, an image appeared. Daniel's stomach dropped. It was their car, parked outside. And inside, he and Sarah were sitting there, motionless, their faces pale and lifeless. Sarah stumbled back, choking on a scream. That's us!" The screen glitched, the image twisting and warping, before going black again. The clerk rose from his chair. His voice was colder now. "The motel doesn't like when guests resist." They bolted from the lobby, hearts racing. The snowy wind cut at their skin, but they didn't stop until they reached their car again. Daniel fumbled with the keys, but before he could unlock the door, he froze. The girl was back. She stood in front of room 6, her hollow eyes locked on them. Slowly, she raised her hand and pointed, not at them, but at the room's door. Sarah shook her head violently. "No! No way, I'm not going back in there!" The girl opened her mouth. This time, her voice was louder, though still soft and broken. "You have to see." Daniel felt the pull again, the same compulsion as before. "Sarah, maybe we should." "Are you insane?" she snapped. "We almost died in that hallway. We saw whatever the hell that was in the mirror." But even as she argued, the doorknob to room 6 turned on its own. Slowly, the door creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness inside. Daniel's breath fogged in the icy air. His legs moved on their own, as if something invisible was guiding him. Sarah grabbed his hand desperately. "Please, Daniel, don't." He looked back at her, torn between terror and curiosity. The girl's voice whispered again, floating on the frozen wind. "If you don't, it will never let you go." The door slammed wide open. A rush of air poured out, impossibly warm, carrying the faint smell of gasoline and burning rubber. Daniel's heart skipped a beat, because inside the room wasn't a bed. It was a road, a highway stretching endlessly into blackness, lined with flickering streetlights, and parked in the middle of it was their car. The room yawned wide before them, a black ribbon of asphalt stretching into endless night. The motel door behind Daniel hung impossibly in midair, a frame leading into a highway that could not exist. Sarah shook her head violently, clutching his arm. "Daniel, no, that's not real. It can't be real." But the smell of burning rubber and gasoline was too familiar. It wasn't just a hallucination. It was the exact scent of their Ford after long drives. And there it was, parked dead center in the middle of the empty road, headlights glowing faintly. Daniel's mouth went dry. "That's our car." The little girl still stood outside, her bare feet pressed into the snow, eyes hollow and pleading. "You have to see," she whispered again. Sarah's voice cracked with panic. "See what? What's the point of all this?" The girl tilted her head. "The end." Before Sarah could protest again, Daniel stepped forward. His foot hit asphalt, not carpet. The air shifted around him, warmer, heavier, smelling of dust and engine oil. The sound of cicadas buzzed faintly, though no trees lined the road. "Daniel!" Sarah screamed, but he held out his hand. "Come with me, please! If this is the only way out, we have to try!" Trembling, Sarah clutched his hand and stepped through. The motel door slammed shut behind them. The silence of the highway pressed in on them, broken only by the faint hum of their car's headlights. They approached cautiously. Daniel's fingers trembled as he reached for the handle. The driver's side door opened smoothly. The interior was identical to their car. Same torn upholstery, same crumpled fast food wrappers on the floor. But the dashboard clock wasn't right. It blinked the same time over and over, 3:17 a.m. Sarah gasped. "That's the exact time we pulled off the highway last night." Daniel touched the clock, but it didn't change. Stuck. Frozen. He slammed the door shut. "This is some kind of trick. Some sick game the motel is playing." A low rumble shook the road. They both spun around. In the distance, a pair of headlights flickered on, then another and another. Dozens of cars appeared on the horizon, engines growling. The faint buzz of cicadas grew louder, blending with the roar of engines. One by one, the headlights began moving, cars speeding toward them on both sides of the road. Sarah grabbed his hand in terror. "Daniel, we need to get out of here!" They ran back to where the motel door had been, but it was gone. Only endless asphalt stretched behind them. The first car whizzed past, so close Sarah felt the wind slam into her. She screamed. Daniel yanked her toward the shoulder, but there was no grass, no ditch, just black pavement stretching infinitely wide. They were trapped on an endless road with nowhere to go. The roar grew deafening. The headlights blurred together until it was impossible to tell how many cars there were. And then Daniel saw them, the drivers. Every single one of them looked exactly like him. Dozens, hundreds of Daniels, gripping steering wheels, their faces blank and pale, their eyes black pits. Sarah saw them too. Her scream pierced the roar. "Oh my God, Daniel, it's you! They're all you!" He stumbled backward, heart hammering in his chest. No, that's not possible." A car screeched to a stop inches from him. The driver leaned out the window. It was him. Same voice, same face. "You shouldn't have checked in." The car sped off, vanishing into the blackness. Sarah collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "This isn't real. This isn't real." Daniel pulled her up, forcing himself to stay calm. "It wants us scared. That's how it controls people. We can't give in." But deep inside, a seed of doubt twisted in his gut. What if these weren't illusions? What if every version of him was a guest who had checked into the motel before and never left? The cars kept coming, endless streams of Daniels, all staring, all hollow. The little girl's voice echoed faintly from nowhere and everywhere at once. "They never leave." Suddenly, every car slammed to a stop at the same time. Engines cut. Headlights blinked off. The road plunged into total darkness. Sarah gripped his hand so hard her nails dug into his skin. "Daniel, what now?" A single pair of headlights clicked back on, illuminating the road ahead. The beam cut across the asphalt, landing on a door standing upright in the middle of the highway. The same door as room 6. The knob turned slowly. The door swung open, revealing not a room this time, but a flickering television screen. Static buzzed faintly. On the screen, Daniel and Sarah, sitting in their motel bed, fast asleep. Sarah's voice cracked. That's us last night." The static twisted, the image warping. Now it showed them outside, running through the snow, staring at the girl. Now it showed them here, on the road, holding hands. Daniel felt bile rise in his throat. "It's watching us." The TV cut to black. A line of text appeared in pale green letters. "Checkout, 3:17 a.m. Sarah stumbled back, trembling. "Checkout? Daniel, what does that mean?" Before he could answer, the ground beneath them split with a deafening crack. Asphalt peeled away like paper, revealing nothing but black void underneath. The road crumbled, stretching toward their feet. Sarah screamed as the pavement gave way beneath them. Daniel lunged for the open door with the flickering screen, dragging her with him. They jumped. You know that moment when you realize you've made a mistake too big to undo? That's what I felt as I pushed open the door at the end of the hallway. It didn't creak, didn't groan, didn't even whisper, just swung open silently, like it had been waiting for me. Inside was nothing. I don't mean an empty room, I mean nothing. Blackness so thick it seemed to suck the light from my flashlight. The beam didn't bounce off the walls or the floor. It was like shining a light into a mouth that never ended. "Don't step inside," Ellie whispered, clutching my sleeve. Her voice was trembling, but not with fear. It was like she already knew. But I stepped in anyway. The temperature dropped instantly, a wave of cold that made my breath fog in front of me. Behind me, I felt Ellie pulling back, but the room pulled me forward, like the air itself had hands, pushing me deeper into the dark. Then the door slammed shut. Ellie screamed and pounded on the other side, her voice muffled as though miles away. I was trapped, alone. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Slow, deliberate, inside the room with me. "Why did you open the door?" a voice whispered. It was right in my ear. Hot, moist breath slid across my skin. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the dark, but it caught nothing. And then I realized this wasn't a room. It was a space. A pocket carved out of the house, existing between walls, between time. And whatever lived here had been waiting, starved of attention, for someone foolish enough to enter. The breathing grew louder, ragged, like a dying animal trying to stay alive. My flashlight flickered, stuttered, then died completely, leaving me in smothering darkness. That's when the faces appeared. Not real faces, impressions in the blackness. Pale, distorted outlines, like they were pressed against a thin sheet between me and them. Mouths opened and closed soundlessly, eyes rolled in sockets too wide, too empty. I staggered back, but the floor seemed to dissolve under my feet. The blackness swallowed my steps, and I realized I wasn't standing anymore. I was sinking. Sinking into the house itself. No, you don't get to leave," the whisper hissed. This time it wasn't just in my ear, it was inside my skull. Then something grabbed me. Cold, bony fingers curled around my ankles, pulling me deeper. I kicked, clawed, screamed, but it was like struggling in quicksand. The more I fought, the faster I sank. Through the dark, I caught a glimpse of Ellie's face, tiny, far away, framed in the thin sliver of light around the door. Her mouth moved, screaming my name, and then her hand shot through. Fingers brushed mine. For one impossible second, I thought she might pull me out, but something else caught me first. Hands. Dozens of them. Clawing, tearing, dragging. They pulled me down until Ellie's hand slipped away and her face disappeared behind the slam of the door. I landed hard on cold wood. My flashlight sparked weakly back to life, and I realized I was still inside the house, but not the house as I knew it. The walls around me were swollen, breathing in and out like lungs. Floorboards shifted like muscle under skin. And the shadows, they weren't shadows anymore. They were people. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Their eyes were hollow pits, their mouths stretched too wide, whispering in voices that weren't voices at all. A single word repeated over and over. "Stay." One of them stepped forward, its face inches from mine. The skin on its cheeks fluttered as though something inside was trying to push through. "You opened the door!" it rasped. "Now it's open for you!" The floor shuddered beneath me. I realized the entire house was pulsing, every wall flexing like a massive beating heart. And the air smelled wrong, damp, sweet, like rotting fruit. I stumbled toward what I thought was a hallway, but the walls closed in, reshaping themselves, forcing me deeper instead of out. That's when I heard Ellie's voice again. Faint, distant, echoing through the house like a memory. "Run!" But I couldn't run. The walls pressed tighter, and the whispering shadows swarmed closer. Their faces blurred, melting into one another, until they formed a single towering shape. It leaned down until its teeth, long, thin, too many, gleamed inches from my face. "You thought this house was empty," it whispered. "But it's never empty. It breathes. It feeds." And now, the floor vanished under me. I fell, through darkness, through whispers, through the endless lungs of the house itself. And when I hit bottom, I realized the house wasn't just feeding. It was digesting. What if every horror story you've ever heard was never fiction, but a warning? The studio was in chaos. The storm outside battered the glass, making the whole building groan. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting the newsroom in red and shadow. The police radios buzzed, but no one could understand the distorted voices. Emma and Daniel stood frozen, staring at the cracked monitor where the broadcast had cut off. The live feed of the old man had vanished, replaced by static. But beneath the static, a voice hissed, low, guttural, and ancient. "You have opened the door, and now you cannot close it." Emma's knees weakened. Daniel gripped her arm, whispering, "It's not possible. He wasn't even on air." The newsroom staff scrambled. One intern tried shutting down the feed, but every monitor lit up at once, playing the same broadcast. The old man's face, stitched and decaying, his mouth moving in unnatural jerks as though strings pulled him. And then, he began naming them. "Emma Carter, Daniel Ross, each of you has been chosen." The staff gasped as their own names began spilling from the speakers. Every single person in the room called out one by one. Panic spread. Some ran for the doors, but the moment they touched the handles, their bodies stiffened. One woman screamed as her eyes rolled back, collapsing in a twitching heap. Emma tried calling the police again, but her phone screen turned black. Instead of dialing, the same face appeared, whispering, laughing. "You wanted the truth. You wanted me to tell my story." Daniel shouted, "What do you want from us?" The old man's lips split into a smile. "An audience." The storm outside roared louder, shaking the building as if something enormous pressed against it. The glass windows warped inward. Then, every screen showed grainy footage of a morgue. Rows of bodies, their faces sewn shut with the same stitches. The camera panned slowly down the rows until it stopped on a body bag labeled Emma Carter. Emma stumbled back, choking on air. Daniel turned pale. "No, this isn't real. It's staged. It has to be." But the bag on screen began to twitch. The zipper slid down by itself, revealing Emma's own pale face inside. Eyes closed, lips sewn. The stitched mouth slowly opened, breaking thread, and whispered, "Don't you see? You've been dead since the broadcast began." The newsroom plunged into darkness. Screams erupted, cut short by sickening snaps, as one by one the staff were dragged into the shadows. Emma clung to Daniel, their breaths ragged, hearts pounding. In the pitch black, the voice returned, right beside her ear. "And now, the final story begins." The emergency lights flickered once more. Emma and Daniel were alone. Everyone else was gone, vanished, as if they had never existed. On the central monitor, a headline appeared in bold red letters. "Live, the final broadcast, starring Emma Carter, Daniel Ross." Emma's trembling hands rose to her face. Her skin felt wrong, like wax melting under her fingers. She looked to Daniel, but his expression was twisted, his jaw unhinged far too wide. His eyes flickered like static. He was smiling. The old man's voice echoed all around them. "The truth isn't what you report, it's what you become." The screens went black. And somewhere across the country, people sitting at home in their living rooms gasped as their televisions flickered, broadcasting Emma and Daniel's final moments live to millions. The storm outside cleared. The world looked normal again, but in living rooms everywhere, people whispered the same question in terror. What channel was that? And no one could ever find it again. For 50 years, no ship has gone missing here, but one stormy night, it begins again. The first time Alex saw the lighthouse, it wasn't the towering structure that drew his attention. It was the silence around it. Maine's coastline was famous for storms, for waves that could rip a boat apart, but this place felt different. The air itself seemed heavier, pressing against his chest as if warning him not to enter. Alex parked his old Jeep on the gravel path leading to the crumbling lighthouse, the tires crunching under the weight of decades of fallen rock and neglect. He adjusted his backpack, feeling the notebook and camera shift against his back. Journalists often chase haunted houses or cursed towns, but lighthouses were different. They carried history. And this one, built in 1872 and abandoned since 1968, had stories buried like skeletons behind its walls. The locals in the nearest town, Camden's Edge, had given him the usual warnings. "You shouldn't go there, son," Old Man Fletcher said, his voice hoarse, eyes darting to the horizon. "Storms come fast, but it's what happens inside that'll get you." Alex had smiled politely, pretending the warning was part of the usual lore. He'd come to find an abandoned lighthouse to photograph, but the moment his boots touched the icy stone steps, unease gnawed at him. The door was rusted but gave way with a groan, echoing like a dying scream into the hollow interior. Inside, the air smelled of salt, mildew, and something else, metallic, almost coppery. His flashlight cut through the shadows, revealing peeling paint, broken furniture, and a spiral staircase leading upward. A journal lay on a cracked wooden table, as if someone had left it in a hurry. Dust covered the pages, yet the ink remained sharp, almost new. Alex's fingers trembled slightly as he opened it. The handwriting was elegant but frantic. "They come in the fog. I have kept the light burning, but they will not be saved. The sea takes them, yet they never leave. I am their witness, and I fear I may join them soon." A shiver ran down his spine. Was this from the last keeper? From decades ago? The pages mentioned a man named Samuel Black, the lighthouse keeper who vanished in 1968. He wrote about storms, lights on the water that shouldn't exist, and whispers in the fog that carried instructions no human could ignore. Alex felt the first gust of wind push against the broken windows, carrying a strange sound. A faint bell, though no bell existed here. The air thickened, and he realized he wasn't alone. A shadow flickered at the edge of his vision, gone when he turned. He took another step, gripping his flashlight like a lifeline. The spiral staircase beckoned, the faint smell of burning wood and wet stone growing stronger with each step. The lighthouse's lamp room was at the top, encased in glass that had somehow survived decades of storms. When he reached the top, the storm outside had begun. Lightning split the sky, revealing the ocean's fury below. And then he saw it. A ship, impossibly close to the cliffs, battered by waves, yet somehow untouched. Its sails were torn, and its hull bore markings Alex didn't recognize, symbols like those in Samuel's journal. A voice, low and melodic, echoed behind him. "You shouldn't have come." Alex spun around. No one was there. Only the wind whispered through the broken panes. The lamp, long dark, flickered to life, casting an unnatural glow over the room. Shadows danced like living creatures, stretching, twisting, forming shapes that shouldn't exist. A sudden crash below made him jump. Something, or someone, was moving in the lighthouse, unseen but undeniably present. The journal's words returned to him. "I am their witness." And in that instant, Alex understood. This lighthouse was not abandoned. It was waiting for him. Lightning struck again, and the shadows coalesced into a figure. Tall, thin, eyes glowing faintly in the storm. Samuel Black, or what remained. Alex is trapped in the lighthouse with a figure from the past, the lamp mysteriously lit, and a storm that seems to have a mind of its own. Will he uncover the lighthouse's secret, or will he join its victims? The storm raged outside like a beast, thrashing the cliffs with waves that hissed and roared. Alex's heart pounded as he pressed himself against the cold metal railing of the lamp room. Samuel Black's figure, more shadow than man, stared at him with eyes that seemed to pierce through the storm and straight into his soul. Alex's flashlight flickered again. He could see the reflection of the ghostly figure in the glass, but the shape of it shifted with the lightning, bending like liquid shadow. He wanted to speak, to call out, but his voice caught in his throat. The air itself felt heavier, as if the lighthouse had drawn a veil between him and the world outside. "Why are you here?" Alex finally managed to whisper. The figure didn't respond immediately. It moved closer, each step silent, gliding over the floorboards. The glow from the lamp cast long, impossible shadows that seemed to stretch into other dimensions. "You shouldn't have come," it said again, voice sharper this time. "But now that you're here, you must see." Alex noticed the journal on the floor beside the figure, its pages flipping open as if caught in an invisible wind. He stepped forward, drawn to it despite every instinct screaming to run. Symbols and diagrams he couldn't decipher filled the pages, detailing ships, storms, and the lighthouse's light. But there were also drawings of faces, twisted and contorted, some smiling, some screaming, all reaching out from the paper. "They come every storm," the shadow whispered, "and I keep them at bay. But the light, it is not mine to command." Suddenly, a knock echoed through the walls, low and deliberate, like someone tapping from inside the very structure of the lighthouse. Alex froze. The journal's pages stopped flipping, the storm outside quieted for a heartbeat, and then a voice, different, softer, almost pleading, sounded from below. "Help us!" Alex's stomach churned. He knew the voice was not real, or at least not of this world. Yet every fiber of his being told him someone, or something, was trapped in the lighthouse, calling for help for decades. The shadowy figure reached out a skeletal hand toward him. "If you go down," Samuel Black's form whispered, "you may see what I have seen, and you may never leave." Alex swallowed hard, but knew he couldn't stay in the lamp room forever. The door behind him was locked, and the walls seemed to breathe with anticipation. He had to descend to see the lighthouse's heart. He grabbed the spiral staircase, each step creaking like a warning. Halfway down, a strange fog crept into the stairwell, cold and damp, carrying voices whispering unintelligible words. Alex shivered. It wasn't just the storm. It was the lighthouse itself, alive, watching, waiting. At the base, the main room of the lighthouse was different from the top. The decay was worse, but there were traces of recent activity. Footprints in the dust, chairs slightly moved, and a faint scent of smoke. And then he saw them. Shadows clinging to the walls, faces forming in the peeling paint, twisting in silent screams. "They follow the light," a voice rasped. Alex turned sharply. A faint figure hovered in the corner, a sailor's ghost perhaps, bound to the lighthouse by something darker than death. Their eyes glowed with terror and pleading. Alex stumbled back toward the door, but it slammed shut before he could reach it. The fog thickened, enveloping him, whispering warnings and threats he didn't fully understand. Symbols from the journal began appearing in the mist. Circles, arrows, lines connecting to impossible points, like a map he couldn't read. And then he heard the bell again. Not outside, but within the walls. It tolled once, slowly, each strike reverberating through his chest. The shadows reacted, stretching, reaching. He realized with a jolt that the lighthouse was drawing power from the storm, from the trapped souls, and from him. Every heartbeat, every breath, seemed to fuel the dark mechanism that Samuel Black had been trying to control. The whispers grew louder, merging into a single coherent warning. "Do not light it. Do not let the light burn, or all will be claimed." Alex's mind raced. The lamp room, the storm, the shadows, everything connected. If he could somehow extinguish the lamp, maybe he could break the lighthouse's grip. But something inside him, a compulsion he couldn't resist, pushed him toward the spiral staircase again. toward the light, toward the storm. And then he felt it. A hand, icy and impossibly strong, gripping his shoulder. He spun, heart hammering, to see Samuel Black fully materialized, eyes wide, mouth twisted in a silent scream. "You must decide," the ghost rasped, "to save them, or to join them." Lightning flashed through the windows, illuminating the storm-tossed ocean. And in that light, Alex saw a figure rising from the waves. A shipwreck, yet alive, its deck crawling with shadows that reached upward toward the lamp, toward him. The storm was no longer outside. It was inside. It had found him. Alex is now fully entangled in the lighthouse's dark secret. The lamp burns, the storm is inside the building, and ghostly ships rise from the ocean, drawn toward the light. Will he resist the compulsion to light it, or will he unleash the full horror trapped for decades? Alex clutched the railing of the spiral staircase as the lighthouse seemed to shudder around him. The storm had become an entity, roaring through the walls, shaking the glass panes and tossing shadows like living creatures across the room. The lamp's glow pulsed, brightening and dimming as if in sync with some unholy heartbeat. He tried to move, to descend further into the lower chambers, but the staircase felt endless. Every step took him deeper into darkness, and the shadows followed, slithering like smoke along the railing. A whisper echoed. They hunger for the light. Alex's mind raced. The journal's warning about the lighthouse feeding on storms and souls came back to him. Samuel Black's figure had spoken of a choice, to save or to join, but the stakes were now higher. He understood that the lamp wasn't just a light. It was a beacon, calling things from beyond, things that shouldn't exist in the human world. Reaching the base, Alex found the main room transformed. The storm outside was irrelevant now. The lighthouse had become a pocket of madness. The walls were covered with wet, dark symbols that pulsed under the lamp's glow. Shadows moved independently of anything natural, writhing like serpents. And from the fogged corners, voices cried, screamed, begged. Alex could see faces forming in the mist. Men, women, children, some twisted in terror, others with expressions of pleading. He realized with horror that these were the trapped souls Samuel Black had written about, caught for decades by the lighthouse's malevolent power. A hand grabbed his wrist, icy, skeletal, impossibly strong. He spun around to see Samuel Black, fully corporeal, but not alive in any natural sense. His eyes glowed faintly, pleading but sorrowful. "You must put out the lamp," Black said, voice cracking like broken glass. "If you don't, they will rise and claim everything." Alex's stomach churned. The lamp at the top of the spiral staircase pulsed, almost calling to him. Something inside him, a compulsion he couldn't resist, pulled him upward. The shadows surged, twisting and stretching, forming vague shapes of sailors and lighthouse keepers long gone. They whispered, "Bring the light. Let us rise." He fought against the pull, but it was like swimming against a tide of molten darkness. The whispers grew louder, merging into a chorus that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Stop!" Alex shouted, trying to regain his strength. "I won't let you control me!" But the lighthouse wasn't listening. The fog thickened, wrapping around his legs, slowing him down. From the journal, he remembered a sketch showing the lamp's mechanism. It could be blocked, the light's power contained. It was his only hope. Alex ran toward the staircase again, ignoring Samuel Black's warnings of certain doom. He reached the lamp room and found the mechanism exactly as the journal had shown. A lever and a series of gears controlling the glass panels. If he could seal the lamp, maybe he could stop the lighthouse from calling the shadows. But the shadows were already inside. One lunged at him, a sailor, frozen in a scream, eyes black voids. Alex stumbled backward, almost falling. Samuel Black appeared again, reaching out. "Do it! Seal it, or all is lost!" Alex grabbed the lever, his hands slick with sweat. The shadows hissed and screamed as if they could smell the attempt to thwart them. He pulled with all his strength. The gears ground, the glass panels clicked shut. The lamp flickered, the glow dimming. For a moment, the storm inside the lighthouse seemed to hesitate, as if the building itself was reconsidering its wrath. But the pause was brief. The lighthouse shuddered violently. The floor trembled. The shadows screamed, and a deafening roar echoed through the chamber as the ship from the storm, the ghostly vessel, crashed into the side of the lighthouse with unnatural force. Water and debris flooded the room. Alex was thrown to the ground, gasping, soaked in icy seawater that seemed to come from nowhere. Through the chaos, Samuel Black's voice cut through the roar. "You've delayed them. But the lighthouse never forgets. It takes what it wants, in the end." Alex looked up and saw the fog outside the windows swirl into a massive shape. A colossal, twisted form of light and shadow, rising like a deity of storms, hunger, and death. The lighthouse itself had become a living monster, pulsing with centuries of trapped souls. The realization hit Alex like a hammer. He hadn't stopped the lighthouse. He had only awakened its full fury. Lightning struck the top of the tower, and the figure of Samuel Black screamed in silent agony, dissolving into shadows that merged with the storm. The lamp flared one last time, brighter than anything Alex had ever seen, and then darkness. The storm ceased suddenly. The shadows vanished, leaving Alex in the silent, empty lighthouse. But something had changed. He felt it in the walls, in the air, in his own reflection. The lighthouse was waiting for him to make the final choice. Alex has temporarily survived the lighthouse's fury, but it is alive, aware, and hungry. Samuel Black's warnings echo in his mind, and the ghostly ship and trapped souls are still out there, waiting for the light to call them again. Will Alex find a way to stop it? Or will he become the next keeper trapped forever? The lighthouse was silent now, eerily so, but the stillness felt wrong, like the calm before a storm far worse than the one outside. Alex sat on the wet floor, shivering, his heart hammering in his chest. The lamp had gone out, leaving the room in dim moonlight filtered through cracked glass. He thought he had survived, that he had finally escaped the fury, but the air whispered differently now. The lighthouse had not forgiven him. The walls seemed to breathe. Faint shapes moved in the corners, almost imperceptibly. Faces formed, twisted in pain, mouths opening and closing silently. Alex realized these were the same faces from the journal, the same ones Samuel Black had been trying to save, or perhaps control. The trapped souls weren't gone. They were waiting, watching. Alex stood, trembling, and approached the spiral staircase. The storm outside had returned, but this time it was muted, as if the ocean itself feared the lighthouse. He needed answers. He needed to understand what Samuel Black had been protecting, or what he had unleashed. He found the journal again, lying in a puddle of icy water. Flipping through the pages, he noticed a new entry, one that hadn't been there before. The lamp is the heart. The light calls them, feeds them. But there is a way to trap the storm, to bind the souls. It is not for the living. Only the one who dares to merge with the lighthouse may end it. Alex's blood ran cold. Merge with the lighthouse? That wasn't survival. That was becoming part of it. Becoming one with the storm, the shadows, the trapped souls. A faint light flickered at the top of the spiral staircase. The lamp was relit, glowing with unnatural intensity, though Alex hadn't touched it. The shadows below writhed, drawn upward, forming ghostly shapes of ships, sailors, and keepers, all reaching for the glow. He realized with horror, the lighthouse had chosen him. Samuel Black's figure appeared again, this time fully transparent, his form flickering like a candle in the wind. "I failed," Black whispered. "It wants you. The lighthouse doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. It only waits for the next soul to claim." Alex backed away, but the walls seemed to close in. The shadows were moving faster now, converging toward the spiral staircase. He had seconds, maybe less. Frantically, he scanned the room for anything that could help. The The journal mentioned a mechanism in the lamp room that could trap the storm. Alex realized he hadn't fully sealed the lamp's power. He had only delayed it. He had to finish what Samuel had started, or he would be consumed entirely. He raced upward, the shadows twisting and reaching from the walls like living chains. His hands grabbed the lever and gears. Pulling with all his strength, he heard the mechanical groan of the lamp shutting down. The glow dimmed, but not completely. The lighthouse resisted. A hand grabbed his ankle. Alex fell, the cold seawater rushing in from some impossible source. He looked up to see a sailor's ghost, eyes black voids, screaming silently. The lighthouse wanted him to fail. It wanted him to join the ranks of the trapped. Alex summoned every ounce of courage. He pulled the lever again. The lamp sputtered, the light faltered, and the storm seemed to scream in fury. The shadows screamed, forming a vortex around the top of the spiral staircase, trying to drag him into the light. "Do it!" Samuel Black's ghost yelled, "or you are lost!" With a final, desperate effort, Alex forced the lamp into its sealed position. The lighthouse shuddered violently. Shadows screamed, the storm outside roared, and then silence. Absolute silence. The light was gone. The storm had vanished. The lighthouse breathed one last heavy sigh, and then became still. Alex sat on the floor, trembling, staring at the mechanism he had just forced to obey. He had done it. He had trapped the storm, contained the light, and ended the curse, or so he hoped. But as he looked out the window, the ocean seemed different. Too still, too dark, and a faint melodic whisper echoed in his ears. The lighthouse remembers. Alex survived and seemingly ended the curse, but the lighthouse is still alive in ways he cannot fully comprehend. Its whispers linger, hinting that it may not release him or anyone else completely. The final twist is near. What the lighthouse truly is and what it wants is yet to be revealed. Alex thought he had survived. The lamp was sealed, the storm contained, the shadows vanished. Yet as he walked through the lighthouse's main chamber, something deep inside him whispered unease. The air was unnervingly still, too perfect, too quiet. He climbed the spiral staircase one last time, drawn back to the lamp room. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was the lingering pull of the lighthouse itself. When he reached the top, he saw the sealed lamp glowing faintly, a soft, eerie pulse like a heartbeat. And then he saw it, his reflection, or rather, not exactly his reflection. The glass of the lamp was slightly misted, and in it, he saw a second figure, himself, but older, hollow-eyed, pale with shadows curling across his face. His own reflection mouthed words he didn't speak. The lighthouse remembers. Alex stumbled back, heart hammering. Samuel Black's ghost appeared beside him, transparent, fragile, yet resolute. "It's not over," Black said. "The lighthouse, it is not just a building. It is a prison. It is alive, and it chooses its keepers. Every soul who tries to stop it becomes part of its memory, part of its will." Alex realized with dawning horror what that meant. He hadn't just contained the lamp. He had awakened it fully. The lighthouse had marked him. Its hunger had shifted from the storm outside to the living soul within. The shadows returned, not in the room, but within him. He felt a pull in his chest, a cold, creeping sensation that twisted his thoughts. The lighthouse whispered, guiding him, seducing him. He tried to resist, but he felt himself slipping, becoming part of the structure he had fought to control. Suddenly, the journal flew from the floor, pages flipping violently, stopping at a final entry Alex hadn't seen before. The lighthouse chooses the one who dares to fight. It offers power, control, eternity, but at a cost. The one who survives will no longer be the same. They will serve the light, or the light will consume them completely. Alex tried to run, to leave, but the spiral staircase seemed endless. The door at the top slammed shut with a deafening crash. The lamp's faint glow intensified, pulsating in perfect rhythm with his racing heartbeat. He saw shadows in the glass, all the keepers, all the sailors, all the lost souls staring at him, reaching, beckoning. The lighthouse wasn't finished, it was testing him. It wanted him to join, to become the next guardian, the next witness, or it would devour him utterly. Alex's vision blurred. He fell to the floor, grasping at the lamp, trying to pull it away, but it wasn't a simple light. It was a force, a consciousness, a living prison of countless years of storm, death, and fear. "Do you accept it?" a voice whispered inside his mind. "Join us, or be forgotten." Alex realized the impossible truth. The lighthouse had never been just a structure. Samuel Black hadn't been consumed by accident. He had merged with it, becoming part of its memory, its mind, its will. And now it wanted Alex to do the same, to continue the cycle of keeping the storm and the souls contained, but alive, aware, forever. With trembling hands, Alex reached toward the lamp. The shadows surged, embracing him. His reflection in the glass became more solid, more him, yet not him. A scream tore through the room. His own? The lighthouse's? He couldn't tell. And then, silence. When the town below awoke the next morning, the lighthouse was calm, peaceful even, sunlight glinting off its glass. No storm raged, no shadows moved. The structure appeared abandoned, as if it had always been. But inside, in the lamp room, there was a new figure standing silently, waiting, eyes hollow, face pale, a faint glow pulsing in rhythm with the sealed lamp. The lighthouse had chosen again, and somewhere deep in the walls a voice whispered, "For 50 years it slumbered. Now it remembers, and it waits for the next one." The sea crashed outside, indifferent. The lighthouse stood eternal. Alex was gone. Or perhaps he had always been part of it. The lighthouse is not just haunted, it is a living, sentient prison that merges anyone who confronts it with its being. Samuel Black was the first, Alex the latest. Every attempt to stop it only strengthens it, as the lighthouse remembers and incorporates each soul. The horror is that the cycle will continue, endlessly, with the lighthouse silently choosing its next victim.